Hello, everybody. It's a great honor to be with you. I've just spent the morning with your colleagues in Cape Town. I live in Cape Town, but about an hour out of the center, and I've scuttled back home in order to be with you in the comfort of my own office. Just a word about my background to reassure you. Oh God, and maybe it doesn't reassure you. Let me just tell you, and you can decide for yourself whether you're reassured by my background. It is that as you can tell perhaps from my voice, I'm not South African. I'm English, but I married a South African back in 1985 who was in exile, political exile in England. And we moved here when it was possible to do so in 1993 in time for the democratic elections. And I've lived here ever since. So that's about 30 odd years. And in that time, I've been most people know me as a sustainability leadership, something or other, that I've run many seminars for senior executives, helping them to get their heads around what's coming in terms of the environment and social change and so on. Elspeth has asked me to talk about purpose, and my assumption, talking with all of you, is that you are on the DiiVe program because you want to live a successful life. You want to have a successful career and be a great person, or as you know, a great version of yourself. So I'm taking that for read. So um, I turned 70 last year, and so I'm at least three times. I've been around three times longer in a physical body this time around than most of you, I'm guessing. And so I speak not, I hope, out of any arrogance, but simply having been pursuing exactly the same as you, I wanted to have a successful life and I wanted to be a good person. And I've just had longer attempting to do that than you've had. And I very much hope that you will reach 70 and far beyond. So um, I've also, for the last 30 years, I've been mentoring young people. And that's taught me that I have a great interest in the process of becoming a good person. What does it entail to become a good person? And I've not said this to anybody before today, but reviewing it in order to talk to you, I realized that I actually can say with some confidence that I think I am a good person now at the age of 70. And what do I mean by that? I mean it quite specifically in three different layers. The first layer is in my working relationships. So I'm still working part-time, freelance, but I've been working for what, 40, nearly 50 years. And I've come to a point where the people that I work with find me a good person to work with. That I know that because the relationships are strong and enjoyable. In fact, I've just co-authored a book with somebody who, when we started writing, I didn't know terribly well, and I wasn't even sure that I would like him. But we managed to end up having a really pleasant and very productive relationship. Um, and so that's feedback for me to say that I'm quite a good person to work with. At the second, more inner layer, I think I'm a good person for my wife to be married to. We've been married for nearly 40 years now. And I can tell you that for quite a lot of that time, I wasn't a particularly good person for her to be married to. In fact, about 25 years ago, we separated for a year and a half because we thought, this isn't working. We got back together again. And I now know that I am a good person for her to be married to. And that gives me an enormous satisfaction. But it's taken time and a lot of work and some pain. But the final layer is my inner self, because I, like you, go to bed at night on my own, even if there's someone sleeping close to me. Basically, as I fall asleep, it's just me with me. And I wake up in the same way, just me with me. And I spent a lot of my life very anxious about the world, about myself, and my how was I doing, and all those sort of things. And I now don't tend to do that. And so I've reached a point of peace with who I am. And so I'm good for myself. You might be saying to yourself, but this guy's clearly had amazing advantages in life. Now, I don't doubt that um, I had very loving parents. I had four siblings. We all got on. We still get on. And I had a middle class upbringing in England, very good education, and all that. But it didn't mean that I then cruised through work, intimate relationships, and living with myself. Not at all. So what I'm wanting to get across is that the life that I've ended up living, I realize only now by looking back, is the result of tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of small micro decisions that I've taken moment by moment. You will have had several today, I'm sure, where you've had that choice between being open or being closed, being truthful or telling a white lie, being courageous or saying, no, 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 I think I'll back off that opportunity, um, and so on. So it's in those micro moments, most of which, if my experience is anything like yours, take place without my being aware of them, really. I don't actually think of them as being choices, but they are. That they are accumulatively what builds character, what builds your personality in the world, in your intimate relationships, and alone in bed at night. So I would say very simply that that is your work as a human being, is to embrace those moment by moment choices. And we all know from our own experience, both of ourselves and people around us, we can see what it looks like to dodge those choices or to make selfish or poor choices, because they build up into a character that you don't want to be around, who actually maybe even hurts people around them. And I think for a while in various relationships, I was like that. I thought I was a good person. I always thought I was a good person. But in my relationships, I discovered, oh, I don't seem to be such a good person for this person. For example, my wife. I don't need to tell you that we live in an age when there's lots and lots and lots to be anxious about. If you want to be anxious, you've come at the right time. Uh, and I would say that, so we're talking here about things that are by and large out of your control, like climate change, like politics. You don't have any direct impact on how politicians decide. Wars, the fact that we've got nuclear, blah, 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 all of this. I mean, I call it the holo crisis because it's a one whole issue. Doesn't matter which bit you're looking at, it's all one human-made complex challenge. And here's my suggestion to you that one of the most so what you were saying in a way, Sean, which I totally agree with, is that it's not just a matter of time, that this is work. In fact, I would say this is your life work, is to become a person that you really enjoy being, feel really good about being, and that other people really want to have around, close family and at work. And to become that person requires moment by moment attention. That's kind of hard work, but it's good work. It is really good work. Um, and where fear and anxiety comes in is that I reckon that the most important thing I have done in my 70 years, the thing that the achievement I am most proud of, by quite a distance, really, is that I have managed just in the last few years, last 3, 4, 5 years, I've managed to not be the very anxious individual I used to be all through the rest of my life. For 65 years, I didn't realize it until more recently that I was a very anxious person. I was quite successful in various ways and always sort of cheerful in company and so on. But catch me in the middle of the night, and I am really anxious about climate change, nuclear war, whatever is the latest problem of the day. And the issue is so fear and anxiety are baked into being human. We arrive, you know, you know what it's like to hold a baby. They are ridiculously vulnerable. When you come into this life, you come into a life where hurt is not just possible, it's inevitable. You're going to be hurt either emotionally because your mum leaves the room without taking you with her, or because you hurt inside, or something hits you, or you hit something. And so we know there are things to be afraid of very early on in life, and it just gets more complicated I was going to say it gets worse from then on. But in terms of fears, the more we know, the more there is to fear. Okay. I'm not telling you anything you don't know here, but and okay. So I think there are two ways, if you can imagine, if you take for granted that we all live with a daily diet of things to be afraid of, we've got two choices, basically, two choices. One choice is to deny those fears and say, I don't want those are so painful to live with that I'm going to live in a world where I'm not afraid of anything. I'm tough, I'm strong, and uh, any weaknesses in me or any failures I have, any shame that I could feel for something terrible I did to my friend or my wife or whatever, I don't want to own that. That's too difficult. I'm going to put it out. It was her fault. It's your fault. I'm fine. I'm good. So this is the choice of the bully, if you like. And we have some fantastic examples of it right now in the world of people who look strong, but I can tell you, having really gone into this weakness and this fear and anxiety thing a lot in the last few years, I smell the fear in Donald Trump. Deep, deep. I mean, he experiences fear to a degree that I've never experienced, but he's decided to export it. Everybody else must feel fear. He's not going to. So that's the pathway of denial and export. The other pathway is the opposite of denial, is to acknowledge, to notice that I am feeling afraid or ashamed or embarrassed at something I've stuffed up, some mistake I've made, maybe a terrible mistake. To own it and to set about dissolving it painfully through talking about it with someone you can trust, maybe going for counseling or therapy, not taking a lot of alcohol and drugs to blot it out. That's going the other route, because other people will then have to pick up the mess, which is another way of exporting it. Do you get the basic choice that I'm proposing? That again, this is going back to your work in your life. And because fear is such a powerful driver of behavior, I think what we're seeing in the world now is a fantastic lesson in what happens if you go the denial route. Look at the chaos and pain and suffering you spread around you because you're not willing to experience weakness or failure or shame or anything like that. And the grown-up path is to own, to start to dissolve by maybe you need to go and repair damage you've done, whatever it is, but you are owning it and saying, actually, I'm big enough to take on the mistake and learn from it. and move through, and you'll be amazed how it dissolves. So um, that's where I'm. Yeah, we could talk more about this, but I'm going to leave the last words with you. If there's any response to that or a question about this fear and anxiety, because bear in mind that, as far as I'm concerned, the opposite of fear is love, and the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear, because what fear does is it draws you in and it sends the other away, and love opens the channels between you and the other, and that gives the possibility of change. There's no change possible when you've exiled the other and yourself from the other.